Welcome back to Amplifying Our Voices. I'm your host, Patty Hayak. In today's episode, I sit down with Miguel. He's a natural storyteller with an incredible big heart doing amazing things. He's one of my favorite content creators on LinkedIn, where he opens up about his own mental health journey and his healing. This conversation is one that helps break the stigma around men's mental health. I hope you enjoy it as much as I enjoyed my conversation with Miguel. Hello, Miguel. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for taking some time out of your day to chat with me and share a little bit about your story.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Patty. I appreciate the invitation. Congratulations on the launch of your podcast. Excited to support you and be part of it.
Thank you, Miguel. So I like to start off with, where does your story begin?
Well, I always revert to I've always been a storyteller since I was a kid. I've always known that. Spanish is my first language. I was born here in the United States, specifically in Kansas, but I was raised Spanish first. And up until the third grade, I actually went to a school that was fully in Spanish. So every class was in Spanish, and then we just had one English class. And this was while I was living in Texas. And so when we moved to Kansas, back to Kansas after, years of being gone, I ended up, of course, was put into an ESL class. And I remember one time I had turned in a book report to my third grade teacher, and the book report, the assignment was just a one-page paper back and front. Well, me, being a storyteller that I am, ended up turning in a 9-page paper back and front. It was this full story that I ended up writing, and it was really fun. And I remember then thinking like, man, I want to grow up and tell stories. And so I remember telling my teacher that, and she was reading through my paper, and she was like, wow, she's like, you're a really great storyteller. You have a lot of potential in your future. She said, but I do have to tell you something. She's like, you've got something, you've got it, but the reality is, she's like, that your accent makes you sound ghetto. She's like, and it'll hold you back in life if you don't change it. And so I remember at that point, then going home and just absorbing stories as much as I could, whether it was documentaries, whether it was the news, just nonfiction stories as well. I mean, reading the newspaper, reading the encyclopedia, and telling stories that way. And so I've always known that I was a storyteller, and then from then just grew to do many different things. But I always think back to that moment in the third grade of when I really put in the work to tell stories, and then that's when I again had that realization. Because before that, I had grown up wanting to be an astronaut, and then I realized that there was a lot of math, and I wasn't good at math, and so I was like, okay, this is when that's when I really started to lean into the storyteller side of myself.
That's so cool. I love that at such a young age that you had that passion. Now, was there anyone or anything that influenced that storyteller part of you?
When I look back, I one person that always comes to mind was a parasocial relationship that I had developed with Mr. Rogers and the show that he had created. Like, I loved that show. I loved how he presented stories, how he would educate us and inform us about other people, and just how kind he was, how thoughtful he was throughout just the shows that he did and the experiences that he brought to and the guests that he had on. And so I've always been inspired by that man. But in a personal sense, my grandpa, my abuelo, is what I grew up. When I was young, couldn't say abuelo, so we resorted to abuelo, and we stuck to that growing up. And so it was my abuelo, and he was probably the only person in my entire family who ever dreamt big beyond blue collar work or entry level jobs or construction jobs. And he had actually done some background acting gigs. He had always lived in Austin, Texas after he grew up. Back in the days, Austin was, and it still is, big in the film space. And so he had met Arnold Schwarzenegger and some of his idols, and it was always at the Gold's Gym. He was a bodybuilder. But I remember just often like how many conversations we would have about his dreams and the things that he wanted to do. And that definitely encouraged me be to dream bigger and to lean into fall in love with stories and the movie space. But for me, it was more nonfiction than anything, documentaries and stuff. But definitely those two guys. Mr. Rogers was a huge influence in my life, and then my grandpa. Because I mean, when I look back at all of my family, Nobody's really dreamt the way that he dreamed.
That's beautiful. I love that. Well, one, I love that you mentioned the influence of your abuelo. So that's just so wholesome. And mi abuelo, he also played a big role in my life. So I can totally relate with that. But then also Mr. Rogers, you're taking me way back. I mean, who doesn't love Mr. Rogers? And I remember watching that show, and Spanish was also my first language, but even though maybe I didn't really understand to the extent, I still love that show. It just goes to show you how powerful storytelling is, even when you don't even understand the language.
Right. No, and it's funny that you say that even because these days with the rise of K-pop, it's like the biggest thing right now. And I found my kids listening to some K-pop artists, and I'm like, I was actually vibing. I'm like, I have no idea what they're saying, but I'm rocking to I like the beat, I like the music. So it's so cool how we can connect on the things that we don't understand just by the feeling of that it brings you, whether it's from stories or music. Just like you said, the power of storytelling is just huge.
Now, when you think about your childhood or your upbringing, is there anything that stands out that shaped the person you are today?
The reality is, and for so many of us Latinos, Latinas, people from underrepresented groups, is a lot of us were molded by the traumas in our life. Sad as it is, you have to look at things and find positive intent and find the positive in everything and find and it's not in a toxic positivity way, but it's like a form of survival when you look at these things and you try to, okay, it was awful and it was bad, but definitely some things in life that really very young age that taught me how to survive and how to figure things out. Like regardless of what was going on, regardless of the negativity around me, regardless of the things holding me down, there were childhood events that kept me going. There's nothing you can do but just pick up and keep going. And seeing that in my mom, definitely my mom is a huge influence and a huge inspiration for me. When my parents divorced when I was around 8 years old, and my mom was a single mom after that, and didn't really have my dad around a lot, and so watching my mom raise three boys and at times would have three jobs just to make ends meet, just to pay the bills and put food on the table, and then still be struggling. But always, that woman always found a way to make it happen, always found a way to make it work, always found a way to figure it out,
Mhm.
regardless of what you have to do. Growing up, I remember even in my selfish teenage years wanting certain clothes or certain shoes or certain phones. And now looking back at like, man, how hard that must have been for my mom to have said yes to those things, and of course not yes to everything, but there was many times where my mom went without to provide something that we wanted, not things that we needed, just things that we wanted. And so definitely those experiences growing up helped me become who I am today, of putting myself in these industries that I'm not privy to or that I don't have tons of experience in, but I'll figure it out. I'll pick up, I'll keep going. I might fall, but I'll stand back up and just find a way and make a way. And so I think a lot of people can relate in having those experiences when we were younger that may not have been happy or fruitful. They may have been depressing or whatever it was, but at the end of the day, they definitely shaped me into again figuring things out and just keeping putting learning how to just put one foot in front of the other and just keep going.
Right. Absolutely. Well, your mom sounds like an amazing woman, a strong, resilient woman.
Thank you.
But for sure, I can see how those experiences shaped who you are. We just kind of witness our parents doing those things, and we might not necessarily know at that time, but then it just kind of clicks. It's like it's so just ingrained in us. So I don't know if it's something that just comes naturally to us, but even like future tough times, I always tell my husband, look, we've already been through some hard things. Like, we're going to get through this. It's just something that you believe in because you've already been through so much or you've seen so much. So,
Right.
thank you for touching on that topic. Uh, we are currently in June, and June is Men's Mental Health Month. So, you are someone who is very passionate about mental health, and you are very open about your own mental health journey and a huge advocate. So, can you talk a little bit about why that is and your own mental health journey?
Yeah, no, I think it's an important topic to bring to the table. I appreciate you highlighting it for myself again back to the culture that I was raised in and the community. I was raised in a Catholic. I went through first communion and did all those things and growing up, and I remember how much anything mental health related was demonized. If you ever heard of somebody having problems with their mental health or feeling down or struggling, it was always an immediate like, oh, they're possessed or they're demonic or you're not praying enough or you're not witnessing enough, you're not testifying enough, all these things. And so growing up, it was definitely something that I was aware of that was happening, but I was definitely scared to even acknowledge it or to even think about it honestly, because it's like when you grow up around a church who's telling you that those thoughts are evil and that's the devil, and it's like, well, I don't even want to give it a time of day. I don't even want to think about it then. Let me just tuck it away and put it away. And that's what I did for most of my life. Actually, until I was 27 years old, anything mental health related, it was like you put it in a box, you tuck it away, and you just step over it, and you keep moving, and you put it back there, and you hopefully never think about it again. That's how I was raised, and I remember even one point, talking to some people in my family and talking about what was, like, just these feelings going on in my head and then being told, "It's all in your head." And I'm like, "Yeah, no, duh, it is in my head, like, what? Like, help me, and, like, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to." Going back to growing up around domestic violence, my my dad sold drugs when I was younger, and so when I was 7 years old, our house was actually raided by a SWAT team, and so that was a huge event. 7 years old, I was actually sitting in front of the TV when, the door came crashing down in front of me and just whole raid of big guns and AR-16s and everything in your face as a seven-year-old. That was a hugely traumatic experience that I tucked away and I never dealt with, and I'm like, "I'm good." And that was just another day in the life. Growing up with a single mom with 3 boys, was an experience in itself, and so a lot of that stuff, I, again, just kept telling myself, "Oh, I'm okay, I'm alright, like, I got it it happened, nothing I can do about it, gotta keep it pushing, keep it moving," and, it wasn't until I use this as a story, I think that this happens for everybody, whether you wanna think of it as a backpack that we put stuff into to, like, again, put behind us and not see it, because when you I mean, you don't s when you've got your backpack behind you, you don't see what's in there, and so it's like, "Okay, let me throw it back in there, zip it up, and let's keep it moving." But then and so that's what I had been doing, but then for everybody, I feel like there comes a point where that backpack, it starts to rip. That backpack starts to break. The seams, it's just so stuffed with so many things, and then things start to leak out, whether and in the most inconvenient times and in the most inconvenient ways, whether it's coming out as anger, whether it's coming out as sadness, as frustration, as all these other emotions than what it was. I heard it one time and I don't know who it was, I wish I could remember, but I remember thinking, that's genius the way they described it. It's like emotions are energy in motion. And when you don't deal with those emotions, that energy that's supposed to be in motion, it stays stuck inside. And so that energy will stay stuck. And then at some point, again, in the most inconvenient times, in the most inconvenient ways, at work, when you're dealing with the client and you lose your cool, at home when your kid's just trying to ask you something and you lose your cool, it's like those little things, that's where the leaking starts to happen. And so for me, I was 26 years old, I'm going on 27, when finally the backpack just like broke wide open for me. It was like I couldn't fit anything in there anymore. And I remember being at work, and I actually called 911 because I thought I was having a heart attack. I was like, something was going on with my heart. I was breathing crazy. There was all these things going on. And then you come to realize that it's actually, you go to the doctor, went to the hospital, and you get there and they're like, "Yeah, your heart's okay. Have you ever heard of anxiety?" And I'm like, "What?" Like, no, I've never heard. I mean, I've heard about it, but I don't have anxiety. Like, I'm good. Like, I don't have that. Like, I'm not anxious. I'm good. And it's my heart, something's going on with my heart, and they're like, "No, we did a chest, all this stuff, MRI, whatever, and your heart looks good. It's what are you dealing with? What's going on in your life?" And the reality was at that time, and so when I was 9 years old, there was an incident where I was abused by an older friend, well, a friend at the time. And fast forward to all these years later, in the middle of work, this that guy popped up, and it's like I didn't realize how much I had suppressed, and
Mm.
seeing this person kind of brought up all these feelings again and all this stuff that I had blocked out. And then go went to therapy, and then that's when I discovered that your brain does this thing where, when you face trauma, in order for you to survive, it takes something and it'll put it away and tuck it away for you, and it'll like deep, deep in there to where you kind of forget about it. You kind of even forget the experience, or you forget about what had happened, or what it led to. And so it was a lot of unpacking that. And then at that point, I was in the professional where it happened at work. And so my anxiety attack happened in the middle of work around other people, and coming back to work, I had to talk about it. People were asking what happened, are you okay? And then you start to realize how much stigma there is around mental health. And that's when I really got the this like inner desire to talk about it more. And then as I continued to work through therapy, you continue to unpack that backpack, and you're like, crap, I didn't even know that was there. I forgot about that. In 2009, I was 17 years old at the time. I actually attempted to take my life, and actually had forgotten about that a little bit. I had kind of like, again, pushed it away, tucked it away so deep that I was like, oh, I'm good. I'm fine. But I had never actually paused and slowed down enough to actually examine what brought me there, what was going on, and to address it. I just kept on moving. Uh, Thankfully, I didn't succeed. I ended up at a church instead, and one thing led to another. But it was going through therapy and then realizing, I wonder how many other people are struggling with these things that they don't talk about. How many other people are carrying these huge backpacks that are heavy, and weighted. And so, honestly, in 2009, when I had that attempt, that's when the real fire was lit inside of me to talk about mental health. But at that point, I'm 17 years old. I was barely going to graduate high school. I'm like, I can't talk about mental health. I'm shooting myself in the foot. I'm already disadvantaged as a brown man. I'm probably not gonna go to college. I don't have the money for it. I'm like, why would I do that? Why would I talk about mental health? I'm gonna cross myself out before anybody gives me a chance. And so I actually, for 10 years, I avoided that. And I kept having this fire inside of me that kept trying to be lit, of like telling me to talk about mental health. And it wasn't until 2019 that I finally dove in to listen to my intuition, my spirit, and started to talk about mental health, and specifically did it on LinkedIn. And when the first time I did it, I had so many messages from men that were telling me, "Man, thank you so much. I've never told anybody this, but can I tell you? I've never I've never talked about this, but you encouraged me to go see a therapist." I had one CEO who he was overseeing like over 1,000 people. He ran a company, and he came to me and he said, "Miguel, your post inspired me to go talk to our benefits director and redo our mental health benefits to make sure that all of our people have mental health coverage." And so things like that kept me going. But and those proof points are what continue to keep me talking about mental health in these professional spaces. It's like I always tell myself, if I can help just one person, one then I've done my job. I don't need to help 100 people. Like, if one person is impacted, if one person likes my story, one person comments on it, one person DMs me, then I've done my job, and that for me is enough. But I continue to see how important it is for us to have these conversations, especially in professional spaces, especially as Latinos in professional spaces, that we break down these walls that we've built up. And for a long time, when it came to my mental health, I felt like it was plastered on my forehead. I felt like I was walking around with the big old tape with the red marking that was telling everybody what I was experiencing. But it's like the more I talk about it, the less weight and the less power it has over me.
Love that last line there that you mentioned, the less power it has over you. That is beautiful. Thank you so much for talking about that. And that's how I met you. When I think I saw one of your posts on LinkedIn, and it was just something that I don't see often, especially from the Latino culture. I grew up with my dad. He was very machista and very los hombres no lloran, and just this mentality of like men can't have emotions or show them, right? Or we don't talk about it. And so for me to see that someone being so vulnerable and open on LinkedIn, sharing their story, was like, wow, that's amazing. So thank you for talking to us about your journey there and the impact of how it had on other people. Because again, going back to the power of storytelling, that's the reason why we share these stories, or that's the reason why I started this podcast, because I know that we're not alone and that our stories, other people will resonate with them.
Right.
So, and so, I mean, you are a testament of that, right? The messages that flooded your inbox when you were open and shared that.
Yeah, no, and too often like we think of the opposite. One thing that kept me from sharing all those things was the fear of like
Right.
what it was going to keep me from and the opportunities and the doors that was going to close. And being on this other side of it, it's like, boy, was I wrong. Like and it's done the complete opposite. It's like the doors that I've opened because of my mental health stories, the connections that I've been able to develop from people. I literally just had a conversation today with the CEO of a multi-million dollar company, super successful. He pointed out one of my mental health stories, and just about how grateful he was that I was sharing that. And so, and we're talking about doing a deal together for somebody, and it's like those things when you think that they're gonna exile you and they're gonna push you away and they're gonna isolate you, it's like it yeah, in some it'll isolate the people that aren't for you is what I tell people all the time. But what it does is the people that are for you, the people that wanna connect with you because of who you are and not just what you can do for them it attracts those kinds of people. While we think that it's gonna ruin our lives and it's gonna do so much damage, some people might see you in a different light, but it's okay. We can't impress everybody and we can't live for everybody, but there's this huge subset, and I'm an example of it time and time again of how many doors have been opened because of the mental health stories that I've told. And so highly encourage people and anybody out there thinking about it, because anytime we talk about our mental health stories, I know somebody out there is like, man, me too, or I have a similar story, or they don't want to tell it because, again, the fear of what it'll hold them from. But there's so much good that comes from opening up and telling those stories because it connects you to people on a deeper level than just what you do.
Right. Absolutely. Now, I want to go back a little bit about what helped you to take that first step towards healing.
Yeah, for me, it wasn't really a choice. It was like, again, like in that moment, it was literally a moment of my backpack metaphorically just breaking, spilling out in front of everybody. I remember I used to mask with, I remember one time at a party where I was high on drugs, I was drunk on a lot of alcohol, and I was still not feeling high or drunk. And I was like, this masking, I realized in that moment that this masking wasn't working anymore. And that, what I was doing to again, push down or to forget about it or to distract myself or what it wasn't gonna work anymore.
Mhm.
And so thankfully I let go of those things and I was able to move away from that because I started to have a family. I started to grow up. I met my wife when I was 20 years old, and at that point she had a 5-year-old son. And then things developed quickly for us. I always grew up saying I was never going to get married, never going to have kids. I was going to be a bachelor my whole life, and then God brought this woman into my life, and within 2 weeks I remember telling my mom, I think I'm going to marry her, mom. I had to grow up knowing that I couldn't continue to deal with my mental health in through these other ways, but still not knowing what the way was forward. I was in this period of like knowing that I needed mental health support, knowing about therapy, being terrified of therapy, never knowing like, well, what does that actually entail? What is it? What are they going to ask me?
Right.
What is it? Is it in an office? Is it in a mental hospital? Is it like, and having not known nothing about it. And then, so when that experience happened, I was literally brought to my knees of like having to face myself and and it happened in the most inconvenient time, in the most inconvenient way. I ended up thankfully, I had been at that job for a couple years, and so I ended up using FMLA, the Leave Act, the short-term disability, because I was going through therapy is incredibly emotional experience. it's heavy. There's a lot that you're revisiting. And so I was forced to, and so this is another reason why I talk about it and I encourage people to make the choice on your own time to heal. Make the choice on your own time. Make it now on your terms so that you can heal and that you can start working through it so that you're not in a position where I was because maybe you just started at a job 6 months ago and you don't have FMLA. Maybe your job doesn't offer short-term disability and getting to a breaking point and having to go through that experience, maybe you won't have the options that I had. And there's no convenient time to heal, but you definitely don't want it to be in the middle of work at a retail setting where there's customers and your coworkers and managers and everybody there. And so that's why I encourage people take ownership and do it on your own so that you don't have to be forced to do it when you're not expecting it or not ready.
I love that. Thank you. What would you say to someone who maybe is considering therapy, but they're afraid? Like you said, it is hard work. You have to face some things or talk about these things that could be very triggering. Do you have any words of wisdom or advice for, and specifically men?
Yeah. We've reached this point where there's so many resources. I remember in 2016 when I was going through my situation, I remember desperately going online, like looking and anywhere and everywhere for like whether it was a group, whether it was other men, whether it was, who were going through the same thing or had experienced the same thing or I think what I was looking for at the time, I guess I thought like you go through healing and then you're ruined for life, or it's like, are you gonna, if you face yourself, are you gonna be okay after? Or I was like desperately searching for another man that had healed, had gone through it and was okay on the other side of it. And I couldn't find that. I didn't see it anywhere. And luckily now for where we're at in today's world, for anybody listening, especially men, there's so many examples out there of men healing in real time. In 2019, when I started being vulnerable, that wasn't a thing. People weren't talking about mental health on LinkedIn, but I was, as scary as it was. But then it got me to recognize and discover all these other communities and these opportunities of other examples of men that were healing, of men that had gone through it. And the one thing that I go to this often, I recommend it to people so many times. There's this show, it's called Couples Therapy. And it's so funny because I had always when I was younger, I'd always thought about this, wanting to do like a documentary where we just sit in a therapy room and show people because I remember myself always wondering, what is it like? I was terrified. Like, what are they gonna ask me? What are we actually gonna what's the environment like? Is it gonna be medical? I don't want to be, is it gonna be like like a doctor's office? And then you see it's more like a children's playroom, like so comfortable, the lights dim, super comfy couches, play stuff and whatever. And so I'd always had that idea. It's funny because even I go back to a note that I had in 2017 of writing this idea for a documentary inside of a therapy room. So, anyways, fast forward, somebody God gave that idea to somebody else, and they went for it. And there's this show now; it's in its fifth season. It's called Couples Therapy, but it's one of the most realist examples that I've ever seen in real time of people healing. And I encourage people to watch that show because so often watch a couple episodes to experience to see what it's like. Because I remember being in that space of just being so scared of not knowing what would I be walking into. Okay, say I know I need therapy. I know I have the therapist number. I know where their office is located, but what's it actually going to be like? What am I actually going to what am I going to experience? What am I going to what's going to happen after? And so being able to see somebody going through it is definitely something that I think helps people. And at the same time, you're again the power of storytelling. You watch these other people working through their stories and telling their stories, and then you're personally impacted. My wife and I literally were watching, they just released season 5 not too long ago, and in, like, season 3, we started watching it together, and even again, we've been together 14 years, married 12, we just celebrated our 12 years in April, and
Congrats.
we were laying in bed the other day watching it, and we both looked at each other at one point in the show, and we're like we started talking about some stuff between us, and it's like, "Yeah, oh my gosh, I didn't see it that way," or have you been and it's just like it opened up different neural pathways and different realizations. for anybody that's out there struggling that knows that they need therapy but is scared of, it's one of the most terrifying but best things that you can do for yourself. And then especially in today's world where we have examples of what it's like, where you don't have to go in it blind. There's shows out there, there's people that are just there's therapists that are influencers now that talk about what it's like and what to expect. And so I definitely encourage men to lean into those resources so that you can know what you're walking into. Because as men, we don't want to be surprised. We don't like to walk into the unknown. And so knowing a little bit about what things are like and what to expect, I think really helps it. And especially as men think it's gonna exile me, it's gonna put an X on my chest. Nobody's gonna ever wanna work with me, nobody's gonna ever wanna hire me, but I am proof that the opposite is true, and people will wanna hire, people will wanna work with you, people will wanna get to know you and befriend you and recommend you and have you on their podcasts and all these things.
Mhm. That's awesome. Thank you. What helps you stay grounded today?
Definitely number 1, my faith, my one-on-one personal relationship with God that I've developed. I don't go to church every Sunday. I'm not the typical Christian that people think about. But I can tell you that I have a very strong personal relationship with Jesus Christ myself. I pray constantly. I read the Bible. I do devotionals, and so I stay grounded in my faith and who God is. He's the one who saved me. I mean, again, back to the story of me attempting to take my life. I had already put some things into action, taken some drugs and things, and that morning was supposed to go a different way, and then I ended up at a church, at my grandma's church. I was living with my grandma at the time, and for about a year, and every Sunday morning, my abuela, como le llamo, would come into my room and, "Mijo," she'd knock on my door, "Do you wanna come to church with us today?" And I'm like, "No," I was hungover or whatever, and so I never went with them, and then this one morning, it was just like an out-of-body experience where I was just taken to church, and I remember I'll never forget, I walked into the church with my grandma right behind her, and the pastor was in the middle of a conversation. He was talking to somebody, and he saw me, and literally I can see his voice conversation. He just stops his conversation, walks over to me, he puts his hands on my shoulder, and he said, "Miguel, God wanted me to come over here and tell you that you're supposed to be here right now." He's like, "I don't know what that means." To me, I mean, of course, I broke down because I'm like, I was planning on not even being here anymore. And so that really started my relationship with God, um, to this day. I'm a, sinner saved by grace. I'm not a perfect person, but I lean into my faith. I lean into the promises God has made, the promises that He's kept, that He's shown me. It was God that was the Spirit, Holy Spirit in me that was telling me to talk about mental health in 2009, and I'm like, heck no, God, like not me. I'm not doing that. Like you're crazy. And so in 2016, that again, inkling kept coming in, and so I was like, "Okay, God, I wanna meet you halfway. I'm gonna start an anonymous blog." So I started an anonymous blog with anonymous Instagram, anonymous Facebook, and it was called like Men's Talk Mental Health or something like that. And I was doing that for about 2 years. I was growing these channels, and but then this like internal thing kept was like, "Okay, that's cool, but that's not what I was asking you to do." And so finally, I went on a mission trip to Guatemala in 2019 and really prayed and prayed hard about it. And I was either at that point, I went in praying like, God, I'm either going to run for Senate, for a congressional Senate seat because I need to create change. I want to do good in the world. We don't see Latinos in these spaces. We need to create action, whatever, whatever. I was also at that time, my wife and I were leading youth group at our church. And so my pastor was trying to court me to go into, being a pastor. And so it was either, okay, God, I'm going to either run for Congress, I'm going to become a pastor, or I'll do the social media thing, which I really didn't want to do the social media thing because I've always been a behind the scenes kind of guy. I didn't want to put my face out there. I didn't want to,
Right.
I had so many insecurities about myself, but then that one thing led to another. And again, at that trip in Guatemala, God made it really clear, like, we have enough people in the church. I also need people out in the world and spreading our word and reaching people just out in the business world. And so that's when I was led to LinkedIn. and mental health. And my life has changed. Look at my life today and like what was the moment that changed, and it was literally that moment that I decided to obey, to listen to God, and to lean in and talk about mental health that has changed my life. And so that continues to be what grounds me. And of course, my kids, knowing I'm raising boys and future men in this world, and wanting to live by example, and wanting to make sure that I'm not just telling them what to do, but I'm showing them what to do. When I go to my abuelita, on my dad's side, she passed away when I was like 11 years old, and she was one of my favorite people, and one of the only like one of two people that really close to me that I've ever lost in my life. And so I haven't had a lot of loss in my life, thankfully. But anytime I go see her, emotions well up. And I remember taking to my kids there one time, and in my first instinct is to like play tough and to not show emotion and to suck it up and not let my kids see me crying. But it's like, nope, I ended up just letting it flow and letting it go, and showing my sons it's okay to be a man and have
Oh,
emotions. It's
man.
okay to be a man and cry. It's okay to be a man and miss your grandma. Being a good example to my kids, being a good husband to my wife, and then that relationship with God are definitely what ground me and keep me where I am.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I can relate with that too. God has put so many things in my heart where I'm just like, no, no, God, I don't want to. Like, why? But if God puts it in your heart, it's like you gotta obey. We don't have to understand it. We just there's a plan, and so I trust. So I love that you're mentioning that, and then also how you're raising boys and you're showing up that you can express your emotions. And that's beautiful. Thank you. Now, switching gears a little bit, you know how you were saying, okay, so you took that, you listened to God, and you started going the social media route. And that also led you to start ghostwriting, right? For Fortune 500 executives. Can you tell me a little bit, what did that teach you about storytelling?
Yeah, I didn't even know that was a thing. I didn't know people ghostwrited on LinkedIn. God led me there. And I think the biggest lesson learned there is that there are no matter, and I go back to this again of like, you can be struggling with mental health and become successful, and you can become successful and still be struggling with mental health. And so realizing how many stories these executives and very successful people that I mean, the C-suites. I was working for CEOs, COOs, high-end people that in my eyes on paper looked super successful. They were at the top of their careers, but there was still inner turmoil. There were still deep stories that they weren't telling other people. And it was beautiful and amazing in a way, like to be able to step into these spaces and be that key to unlock it for them and to be able to pull stories out. I've had men weep on calls with me when we were talking about strategy and like, hey, tell me about this. Or one thing with my clients is I always got to know clients on a deeper level. I'm like, I want to know who you are beneath the surface. I want to know who you are that we're not telling other people, that you're not showing everybody else. The thing that it taught me is just that everybody has a deeper story that they're not telling, that they desperately want to tell, but they just need the space, they just need the room, they just need the permission. They need somebody to create that for them to be able to walk into it, to be able to release it. And we can do that through our stories. And those people were encouraged to tell me their stories because of the stories that I told, because of the stories that they read from me. So it again just goes to show you of how powerful our stories are, that they empower others to release their stories and to release the weight that is holding them bound back and down, you know?
Yeah. Was there anything that shocked you or that you didn't know about ghostwriting? Anything that just surprised you?
Just how many in these very successful positions are lonely, how many are struggling underneath. It's literally, I mean, like almost everyone. When I think about, especially the men that I've worked with, if anything, the women that I've worked with were on their game and they were like at the top of their level, and they were like, okay, you are who you say you are. You've definitely done your own work. But then when you meet these other men who are like, man, like how awful that you are 58 years old and you've had to hold that in your entire life and you've never had a space created for you to be able to release that. I always thought that mental health success with living with a mental health was like this arrival point that you would only get to after getting over your mental health. And so for a long time, it's like I was scared to try things, or I was scared to do things, or I was like, maybe it's not time yet because I need to heal this first. I guess it was a little shocking and surprising to see how many men were just like succeeding and at the top of their game with all this deep trauma or these deep stories that they were pushing down and holding back and realizing just how many people really are hurting out there. And so those are the things that keep me telling my stories. Those are the things that keep me talking about mental health. If my stories can encourage somebody else to set themselves free from their mind, set themselves free from their hurt, then that's what I want to do. And so I think that's what surprised me most is just how many people that are successful that are really struggling underneath.
Thank you. Man, so you've really been in this social media space for a really long time and it's morphed into so many different things. And now you have your talent agency. You're one of my favorite people to follow on LinkedIn because you're just doing so many cool things and I love it. Can you tell me a little bit about the creator space and who you're representing or who are you drawn to representing? And then also, what do you think that missing in the creator economy right now? So I know that's a lot, but
Yeah, no, great questions. The creator space, it was me just taking a chance. I know I'd wanted to get into the space. I knew I was getting a little weary and tired of just 7 years of ghostwriting and telling other people's stories and writing for other people. And a lot of times it's like you have to pull these stories out of people. You have to force them to tell you because you have to continue to keep the storyline going. And so I got to this point in 2022 where I saw the creator economy growing and I really wanted to get into it. And so I had done a couple of deals, just reached out to random people, a Latina one time. She was a 56-year-old woman who had gone super viral on TikTok. And I reached out to her and just like, hey, is there any way that I can help you navigate this? Because I don't want people to take advantage of you. And that was truly my motivation. And did that. So got my first taste of that. And so fast forward to now, where I'm at now, I dove into December of this last year, 2025, to really dive into the talent agency and start repping people. And my first client was Romeo, who made the mega viral Dr. Pepper jingle. Still to this day, people ask me, "How did you land Romeo? How did you pitch yourself? What did you say?" And I literally led with who I am, not what I did. And I led with being a father. I led with being a husband. I led with my relationship with God. I led with just me as a person. And that is what opened the door for me to Romeo. And, uh, and so it's led to some incredible experiences, morning shows, red carpets, meeting celebrities that I've admired and producers and directors and being in these incredible spaces to then leading now to where I've gone from one client to now I'm up to 4 clients right now with 2 little I won't claim them just yet, but they're kids of one of my clients that I'm repping, and she's like, "Let's find deals for them too, and I want you to rep them too." And so now, I'm repping Max Mendoza, who is Fernando and Alberto Mendoza's younger brother. They're both all-star quarterbacks. Fernando just got drafted to the Vegas. He was a number one draft pick this year. He won the Heisman Trophy, won the college football tournament. And then Alberto, their middle brother, who is quarterback one for Georgia Tech this year. And so incredible family, very humble people, humble beginnings. And again, with him, I was just like, "Hey, Max and family, I know you're probably taken care of. I can only imagine you're probably are good now, but just in case, I'm gonna shoot my shot." That was literally my net like, I literally word for word, I was like, I gotta shoot my shot." And then again, leaned into who I am, not what I did, and that opened the door, and then got to hear from Max and his parents that they had interviewed other people. They were interviewing other managers and agents, how blessed I feel and honored to feel that they chose me and they picked me to go into this space and represent them and help Max. And so that's one client that I picked up. And then when I was at an award show a couple weeks ago, I met a former MTV teen mom. Her name's Kel Lowry, and I literally just met her and was the whole intention was to get one of my clients on her podcast. And I was like, "Hey, my name's Miguel. I'm Romeo's manager." And then after the conversation, she's like, "Hey, by the way, I need a manager. Or do you want to have a conversation?" I'm like, "Yeah, heck yeah, let's have a conversation." And It's funny because just last week or 2 weeks ago now, a friend that I met, a connection that I met on LinkedIn, she's an executive. She was the president of a huge agency, VaynerX, Gary V's media agency. She led the they sent her to she was a high-end executive here in America with Gary, worked as Gary's right hand. She was so good that they ended up sending her to Mexico to stand up the Mexico agency. And I'd always respected her, and I've always been following her and her story. I'm always looking for Latinos and Latinas that I can look up to and that I'd be inspired by and that are where I want to be one day. And so her and I have just exchanged messages on LinkedIn. Her name is Maribel Lara, and she's just this incredible human, great person. And we've only had just very short LinkedIn conversations, but she ended up referring me to somebody recently who is another client. He does tour guides in New York City, all in Spanish. He creates all of his content in Spanish, and so it's really unique. He is a creator in the United States, but all of his content is in Spanish, and he's growing. He's got 1 million followers across platforms, and yeah, I'm just so blessed and so excited for the future and what I'm doing now. Definitely feel honored to be here, and it's all again back to me leaning into my story of mental health, my deepest and what I thought were my most shameful stories, my most embarrassing stories, my stories that I didn't want people to hear, and those stories have changed my life and opened doors that I would have been harder to open on my own.
I love this for you. I love all the blessings that are coming your way, all the opportunities that are the doors that are being open. It's amazing to just see you thriving. So I love this so much for you. And I hate that we're running out of time. So I'll have to wrap it up with what legacy do you want to leave?
You know what? I wanna be known for just being a kind-hearted, good human that inspired others through his own story, inspired others to lean into their stories that God has put us into, that we've been selected, we were chosen to be in this world. I want people to be inspired by that, to go into their own worlds, to be kind, to treat people with respect, to have positive intent, to talk about their mental health and to face themselves because it's one of the most healing and rewarding things that I've ever done. Again, I walked around for so many years with so much weight on my shoulders, and it's like I even talked to somebody yesterday. It was so cool. The last time I connected with her was in 2022, and I was in a dark space at that time. And I remember she was telling me yesterday, she was like, Miguel, you have this energy about you that's just like something that I've never seen before. She's like, I can feel and I can see and I can sense and hear in your voice how you're exactly where you are and you're exactly who you're supposed to be right now. And that came from me again talking about those stories, talking about those scary things. And so with for legacy, I just hope I can inspire people to do the same and empower people to face themselves and to bring forward and break down the walls between their personal and professional lives that we've all been taught to build up that will actually open up incredible opportunities for you.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Miguel. I can say that you are truly doing that. You've inspired me many times. I hope that your story will empower others to do the same. So, thank you for
Yes.
sharing
No,
your story and thank you for spending some time with me today.
yeah, no, thank you so much for having me again. Thank you. I appreciate your friendship. I appreciate you embracing the connection. I appreciate you supporting. People think it's just a like or it's just a comment or it's just, but those things mean a lot in today's world because it amplifies and it gets your message to other people. And so I'm so grateful that you thought of me for your podcast and your community and your people. And I'm so excited for you and so proud of you for leaning in and doing what you're doing. And I'm just happy to be able to contribute as a friend.
Thank you, Miguel. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, follow, and share this with someone who might need it. Stay tuned for the next one.